What's up, Dave?
What's going on, Chris? How are you recovering from Cleveland?
Yeah, I'm just getting back to it. How about you?
Yeah, about the same. I feel like all my muscle memory around traveling for work is totally gone. So I got to build it back up after 2 years of work from home.
And you probably did the NFL Super Bowl the week before too, right?
I did. So from sunny, balmy Los Angeles to freezing weather at Cleveland. I don't. Packing was a different experience this time around.
Indeed, the marathon continues. I am exhausted. Ryan, what's up? How's it going?
Hey, brother.
Ryan's hitting us from Florida.
I am, guys. So what was the all-star moment? Was it on the field? Was it on the court? Was it off the court? What did you guys like the most?
What do you think, Dave?
Well, it definitely wasn't the dunk contest, I think, according to
Certainly not.
to pretty much everybody. Man, I think honestly, it might have even just been the musical performances that Saturday night. I think there was a lot of energy around that. But then I think what's nice about Cleveland is everything feels like it's within a small radius. So you're just seeing people running into people. The industry already feels intimate, but relative to even LA, everyone's in this small area of town. And so it's just nice to literally run into people in the concourse of the game or the events, and you're spending an hour just catching up, which I thought was awesome.
Yeah,
what
totally
was the
agree.
sentiment for LeBron? Was the sentiment that was the homecoming? Was everybody all hyped about it?
They loved him.
That's great.
Yeah, especially when he drops the potential rumor bomb of him being open to joining Cleveland. I think that probably gives it a whole other level. So
yeah, right.
Yeah, well, if they keep bombing, they'll get his son maybe #1 pick, and they'll get him back. Also, the halftime show with the 75th anniversary, they brought out all of the living and available players from the 75, and it was so awesome. At the end of it, of course, they leave Michael Jordan for the last. Michael comes out, and it's a big round. Everybody's in the circle. He gets right in the middle of the circle. So Michael Jordan. But he deserves it, so fair enough.
He's the GOAT, for sure.
The GOAT, truly.
Well,
All right, I'll
Chris,
let you guys get rolling. We're a little late, so I'm out of here. See you guys. Enjoy.
See you, Chris.
Dave, so excited to dive into NIL today, but I was stalking your LinkedIn before this, and I saw you were at Whistle and at Complex before IG. Can you give a little, why Instagram? Obviously, you were some really cool places before this, but what made you want to jump to Meta? Yeah,
this is actually my second go around at a big tech company. I guess I spent the first 6+ years of my career at Google and YouTube, and so. Yeah, being at a platform a second time around. It's interesting. When I left YouTube, one of the main reasons I decided to leave was because I wanted to gain a more holistic perspective of the industry that I was working in. And working at a platform, I don't want to see you have a narrow lens, but you're viewing it from a very specific lens. And so I wanted to get out in the wild, so to speak, and really understand the trade-offs, the considerations, the businesses behind our industry beyond just working for tech. And then actually when I came back to Instagram, or came back to the platform side, one of the things that I'd always had in my head was, if and when I do come back, I want to be able to serve the interests of the industry even more effectively than if I just stayed. And the only difference being I'm not at the same platform I was before. I'm now at Instagram, but had some amazing experiences, worked at a startup, worked at a post-acquisition company in Complex, and I think you understand what work culture looks like and how it's different from place to place. Again, how scrappy these businesses are, and then how they engage with companies like Meta and like Google. So yeah, great time. Other than spending my entire adult life in the two most expensive cities in the U.S. in San Francisco and New York. So.
Fair enough. Yeah, Chris was mentioning, I moved to Miami in part because LA was very expensive, but Miami actually has become somehow more expensive because everyone decided to make the same move I did. So. And then didn't get the upside. So it sounds like, from my POV, you were at amazing locations before this. Instagram is just pure scale. That's just where everyone lives and breathes. That's where all the sports content exists, across other platforms. But Instagram is massive, at least on my feed. I want to dovetail into NIL. So for years you were there when it was professional. Now it's in the NIL since July of last year. What are the biggest opportunities that you see for these college athletes from let's do biggest brands first, and then we'll talk about some of the more local stuff. So biggest brands, what do you think is the biggest opportunity? What's the most exciting part about the NIL space?
Yeah, well, I think it is so new, and you've got brands that are jumping in, head first in determining how they want to be meaningful, quite literally in the short term, because we are even, less than a year into it. But honestly, I think the thing that excites me the most, whether you're a local brand or a regional brand, is the fact that there are opportunities available to college athletes. Because from a social and digital perspective, you've had college athletes building their brands and engaging fans for a very long time, but finally being able to fully embrace what it means to be a monetizing content creator. And on the brand side, it's opening you up to quite literally hundreds of thousands of possible collaborators to help you amplify your brand message and find real partners in your business. And I think what's great about what college presents that feels a little bit more unique than some of the professional athletes that brands work with is that it can be at a very hyper local level, but it can be on that national scale. And so it's not just about let's go find a way to work with LeBron James. It's let's go find a way to work with, 5 athletes who are in Happy Valley who, want to be meaningful in their local community. And so I think it's presenting unique opportunities on both sides. But for me, just what's been most exciting is that in preparing for July 1st, it's that college athletes are now able to fully realize their potential on social and digital. And, hats off to Donald De La Haye Jr., former, known as Destroying, a guy who pushed this envelope years ago when he made a hard decision about leaving college athletics to pursue full-time content creation. So, we have some pioneers before us who have gotten us to this point, but it's a choose your own adventure for a college athlete. It's a choose your own adventure for a brand. And I think we're just, we're completely on the front side of it all.
And I'll say it myself. So we've done about 8 figures in NIL deals over the last little less than a year now. It's obviously in July. What was really unique for us, and I'm not sure if you guys said the same thing, is that everyone assumed based on the rules and regulations it's supposed to roll out state by state, kind of like these little blocks of states. So we really assumed that it would be all regional and local based for we were talking to brands 6 months before, like, hey, let's think about your strategy for the Southeast or whatever it was. And then, the day after, it's just like everything is wide open. So everyone started to scramble and figure things out. Were you guys thinking about this from a regional and national perspective, or you guys have so many SMBs, small, medium-sized businesses, that really probably aligns well with the local nature of these athletes?
Yeah, for my practice, the focus has always been on how do we equip, educate, empower student athletes and the ecosystem around student athletes who are designed to support them. So that's been our sort of tip of the spear of how do we engage them? How do we make sure they understand all of the tools, resources, features, practices that are going to position them effectively to work with and partner with brands. On the brand side, and as you know, because we've had these conversations in the past offline, we want to make sure we're doing a job of getting out on the road, so to speak, with our colleagues internally, because NIL is, from a sales perspective, from an ads perspective, just such a buzzword. But the reality is, for every one brand that is jumping in head first, as I said, there are 10 who have no idea how to get started. They have no idea who the players are, quite literally the players. They have no idea the platforms that they should be leveraging to identify talent, to engage talent. They don't know who the most proficient agencies are, such as yourselves, in terms of soup to nuts, ideating, executing on ways to work with within NIL. And so we have tried to put, if not equal effort, we've tried to put substantial effort in literally going around our teams internally to say, here's what this is, number one, because I don't want to pretend that everyone's as into college athletics as you or I are on a personal level, but here's what this is, here's what it means, and here's what it means to you and your clients, because that's what's going to take us from, sort of conceptual to reality and getting more brands involved. And then as a result, getting more money pumped into this ecosystem.
And really it's supply and demand side. And we're obviously, they both kind of hit the market at the same time because of eligibility pieces. We had 3 amazing people before this. Chase, who I've known for the last few months. He's really a renaissance man across, from business to art, etc. Emily and Rasan. I guess the question is whether they or the people that are listening, I'm sure there's not some things you can't provide because you don't know the answers, but in terms of what are the best ways for the supply side, the NIL athletes that are trying to figure out how to build their own audiences, what should they be doing to grow? Which should they be using reels? Should they be doing stories? Should they be thinking about certain types of content? What would you suggest to them?
Yeah, I'm going to be a little cringeworthy, although I feel like this word's probably been used throughout the day. But first of all, be authentic, right? This isn't a new concept when it comes to creators and social media. Countless creators for years in the early days of YouTube even were concerned that branded content would completely tank their channels. Fortunately, we're in a place now where creators are comfortable in monetizing via branded content. Users know it's part of their favorite creators' business models. And the best athletes and creators are integrating tastefully and not oversaturating, to your point, when it comes to their feed, to their presence online. Second, and this is straight up social media 101, be consistent, not just for the sake of finding brand partners, but because that's what your fans expect. That's what they enjoy, and that will help you get brand deals. One thing that I actually think it's not a pitfall, so to speak, but it's something that media companies have to think about a lot, which is content isn't necessarily a one size fits all across various services and platforms. So think about all the ways, all the different services on Instagram and otherwise, where that offer unique ways to engage your fan base. So expressing yourself on services like Reels and Stories, whether it's interactivity in Stories and actually truly soliciting fans' feedback, commerce tools that actually help drive ROI when you're ready to transact with your fans in a meaningful way, or just highly creative content in Reels. So I think those are linchpins, so to speak, of how athletes can better prepare themselves for this moment, and actually be even more appealing to work with in terms of brand partnerships. But I'd also say, and the panel before us was just so outstanding because you realize, one, how talentless I am relative to these student athletes today. I mean, it's insane just how talented they are on and off the field. But how are you letting a fan, let alone a brand partner who comes to your account, how are you letting them know who you are besides being a student athlete? And I like to use, I'm going to date myself a little bit, unfortunately, but I like using Jeremy Lin as an example, because back in the day, and for those who don't know, Jeremy Lin, just Google Linsanity and you'll find out. Back in the day, before Linsanity, people forget he was a full-blown content creator on social media who expressed himself, collaborated with his community of friends and social media rock stars. And when Linsanity happened, brands looked for him. His channel reflected his values and his interests. So he was ready for that moment. He was ready for his on-the-court success, and it immediately translated to business opportunities that he otherwise may not have been able to have. And so I think, again, that to use that word authentic, but I think it's about more than just finding out that a student athlete plays for a certain team and this is the content they have on the court. We can get that from a lot of different places. We come to Instagram specifically and social media overall to get closer to these people and who they are and the things that they love. And that's what I want to see when I go to folks' pages. And that's what a prospective fan wants to see. And that's certainly what a brand wants to see.
Well said. And people will ask us, what's the best way to get recognized by brands? I'll say a few kind of hygienic things. One is talk about what you love, because companies like us actually can see if you've mentioned that brand before or mentioned that vertical before. Obviously hashtags or any sort of mentions or even imagery. Brand safety. I know that you want to be authentic, but also kind of put that filter on there that this is like a job interview for everything you do in life. So if you're going to use it sparingly. And then, just like I said, I think what we've seen is for us, it's always been the marriage of compelling content with distribution. Their algorithm will pick up the best stuff, but really, like if you were to collab, if Chase and Emily and decided to make a collab together because they believe there's some sort of common interest in working out, that would go well, because if that's how they're perceived, they have both their audience to see it and hopefully get some kind of sharing of followers. So I think you guys, and I actually, separate from all this, I love that new feature you guys did. We can actually collab together in those posts. My brother and I did it for the Super Bowl, and we had the most engagement we ever had before. And it's because it's collaborating two different audiences.
Well, and I think to your point, I mean, it is a tremendous feature and it truly allows for a sharing of audiences. But, if I was an athlete in evaluating the merit of working with a brand or a series of brands, it's also what new audiences can the brand bring to me, right? What kind of exposure, what kind of eyeballs can I get that people who may not know who I am in my local market, regional market, even national market may not be aware of me, what I stand for, what I'm interested in. And that is definitely part of the sort of trade between brands and athletes, is especially on the college level, is you have the opportunity to tap into new audiences, to hopefully be highly creative and collaborative. And then from a literal perspective, to your point, using the platform tools across Instagram and social media to actually build audience and to have that audience stick.
Well, we could spend all day talking about how best to, and we will further questions talk about the tactics of brands and supply side and demand side and all those kind of things. It would be remiss to not mention that metaverse has now become part of the nomenclature, and meta is the big key reason for this, at least in my mind. So when we think about the idea of what the future or existing metaverse is, what is your POV as it relates to maybe NIL? I mean, is there anything you kind of see in the horizon, anything you see maybe today that is happening? Just look at your POV on it, even if it's just short and top level.
Yeah, I think the beauty of what we're seeing across social media, but as we get into Web3, metaverse, et cetera, is that the creator community is going to tell us, let alone show us how they want to participate, let alone monetize this next version of the web, right? So if the metaverse is truly the future of how we're going to connect and create memories when we're not together here in person, and what we can experience together in a virtual environment, college athletes are really well positioned for the metaverse in ways in which they can engage and express themselves. It's obviously early days, but there's very clear potential there. I mean, imagine a world where, and I think they talked about it a little bit on the last panel, imagine a world where athletes can sell NFTs that fans can purchase to display in their own Horizon homes. Imagine a world where athletes can conduct virtual training sessions for aspiring athletes, both at a local level, but also with communities around the world. And so, like I said, we're still at the front side of this, but we're excited to work with universities and student athletes to bring our version and their version of the metaverse to life. And for brands, I know you've got brands who are listening in, we're already seeing that investment in terms of, this version of the metaverse, but it's still rooted to me around, in terms of collaborating brands and athletes, around three things: content, community, and expression. And that is still, those are principally aligned with our current version of the web, so to speak. And those will certainly carry on in Web3.
And I love the larger implications of Web3. We talk about all these things about equity. How do you drive dollars in the hands of people that need it most? These small businesses that pop out of these college athletes, their name, image, and likeness. You have the ability for a influencer / athlete to actually own their own IP, which I mean, if you played early NCAA games, it's literally just like there's no name in the back. It's just faceless, kind of like people. So now Chase can go and create an NFT project that is fully compliant and doesn't have any issues with him potentially losing his scholarship or his status on the team. I think that's where the most exciting part is. It really does say that no matter what going forward, that whether if you've created a community, that community can now be supportive and actually monetized to make you essentially keep your craft going.
Yeah, absolutely. And the idea of IP in general, what that's going to look like in terms of, again, the metaverse and Web3 overall, but the ways in which we'll be able theoretically to monetize in terms of viewing transactions and rewarding creatives, originators, I guess, for lack of a better term, that's something that's really challenging to do right now, right? And there isn't a great way to sort of see that, from soup to nuts. And so, how does that present opportunities? Yes, NIL, but just more generally speaking, for a creator community that isn't accustomed to being able to monetize X amount of times over, so to speak, and be rewarded again for all of the ways in which they are bringing their personal brand to life, but bring real value to their fans and followers, right? It's also an empowerment piece for the fans, which, again, I think there's a degree of that we get right now. But I mean, you look at the Super Bowl that I know you all were at a few weeks ago, and you've got your own minted NFT from the NFL to showcase that experience. There is nothing stopping you from going out and selling that to a collector right now. And theoretically, the business model around in exchange and around selling is going to evolve too. And I think it's just a matter of, frankly, it is a matter of time. But I'm excited to see all the ways in which new models for monetization come up. Granted, there's so many good ones right now that exist in terms of how creators and athletes can monetize on social and digital. But again, you're gonna see that portfolio grow even more as we get into these new immersive environments.
I completely agree. Well, so we've talked about all the positive things and the best things about NIL, and since July, essentially, a bomb was dropped on the brands of, oh, I need to get in this space, thinking they had more time to kind of roll it out and kind of see and test the waters. With that, you've got a lot of people that are running around trying to figure out how to do this from the supply side, the demand side, the connectors like us, the technology side. What have you seen that are some of the biggest recurring issues, whether it's in the influencer, creator side, or on the brand side, that you would like to call out? I mean, obviously, we're all working towards solving it.
So I would say, well, one, for every brand that's jumped in headfirst into the deep end, I'd be willing to bet there are 10 others who have no idea how to get started in this space. So I keep using the word front side, but we are truly on the front side of this. But they may not know how to get started. I mean, frankly, again, even from a compliance perspective, the rules quite literally could be different on a state-by-state basis, let alone on a high school or college basis. So there's a lot to wrap your head around. And fortunately, we're seeing more participants in this ecosystem that are going to lower those constraints and make it easier for a brand to participate. That we're not there yet. That's not fully realized, but we're getting to a better place. But think about it as well. If you're a brand, there are 450 players in the NBA. There are around 1,700 or so in the NFL, around 1,000 in Major League Baseball. Overnight, you had hundreds of thousands of student athletes who are eligible to work with a brand on a local and a national level. So suffice to say, I think brands need help. They need help from creative to identifying talent, because college athletics is about so much more than just the head. It's also, and we know this as fans of college sports, it's a revolving door. So you have thousands of athletes entering this ecosystem on a yearly basis. And so how can brands find trusted partners who understand the value of these athletes, who may or may not have outsized followings, but who certainly have deeply engaged youth audiences? And so I think we need to sort of do a job of demystifying that, of making the entry points easier, which again, there are a lot of third parties who are working to do that. And our company is certainly one of them. But to answer your question from the athlete side of things too, I think it's a good reminder that it's still crawl, walk, run for the vast majority of student athletes. You have to present what your value is, and then go and deliver on that value and exercise best practices, collaborate, express yourself, put yourself in a good position to do deals. I think there was this mystery of NIL come July 1st that all of a sudden, if you're a college athlete, deals are going to roll in. And I think what we found is, again, NIL is choose your own adventure. It's going to mean different things to different people, whether you're Paolo Banchero and you're a top draft pick, or whether you're the coxswain on the Wisconsin rowing team. It could not mean it could not be more different depending on who you are in this ecosystem. So understand what you want out of this, understand what value you can provide if opportunities do arise, and really be ready for that moment.
And so there's the brand side, which you eloquently kind of outlined the issues. I actually, so we've run dozens and dozens of campaigns, from smaller ones to very like the 7-figure type campaigns. What I think brands assume is that by nature of a athlete having a large following and being now available, that they inherently are content creators. That's a skill set. It's a muscle. So we've had to go through the learnings and the trials and tribulations of, first off, who's actually already good at this? Who actually has the skill set from doing this, like Jeremy Lin did previous to Linsanity? And then now that there are so many people that want to figure out how to become content creators beyond just for their local kind of friend circle, who just on the campus version, it goes to what is the education? And it's actually a good segue into we have our own educational things we're doing with on any individual brief. Some materials are put out to the kind of larger community to kind of help them. But I'd love to hear about what you guys are planning on doing or doing today that give them resources.
Yeah, to your point, I mean, there's one sort of tailwind that benefits all brands when it comes to working with athletes, and one that will consistently go against them. And that is, what's going for them is every generation over the past few generations of athletes, and then all the ones to follow, they all are more homegrown on social and digital than the generation that preceded them. And so they probably have a fluency, let alone a proficiency in how to use social media, and to your comment, how to actually be creators. But that certainly isn't everybody. And there's a reason that stories on Instagram is still arguably the most popular format for an athlete, because it's, pick up your phone. Sorry, I don't know if you can even see my phone with this background. Pick up your phone and point and click and shoot and be sort of raw, organic, authentic. The thing that, and so that's the thing that's going for them. The thing that's not going against them, but is always to be mindful of, and was heard just on this past panel, is these are athletes who have professional aspirations. So in terms of priorities, you're probably gonna be wanting to work with people who at the top of the list is, how do I be the best I possibly can be on the court, on the field, on the pitch, in order to have a career in what I love to do. And those aren't conflicting per se, but I think it's things to be mindful of, because it makes the job that my team wants to do even more important, is how to actually teach and coach student athletes to be more effective content creators, because it's not a foregone conclusion that they have all of those skills, that they understand the mechanics and nuances of each platform. So that's the responsibility that we have and that we want to play. We also know, in terms of what we have going on, as you asked, like, we're going to announce a number of partnerships that are focused around education. We launched one last year and with Front Office Sports over the summer, which was essentially a 6-part program and curriculum designed to educate and empower the ecosystem around student athletes about how they could better support those athletes when it comes to their social media presence and how they can grow and monetize, et cetera. Because we know that, most athletes, when they're thinking about how they want to position themselves in this era of NIL, will likely turn to their peers. They will most certainly turn to their athletic departments and their marketing agents, et cetera, for how do I get better at this? How do I position myself more effectively so I can get the deals that I want to have? And so our responsibility to the ecosystem is really rooted in that education piece and that enablement piece. And it goes beyond just the student athletes directly whom we are working with. It certainly goes to that ecosystem around college athletics as well.
Love it. So you have a brand, you actually have a full-fledged content creator athlete that is doing a great job. There's that middle ground. So what does that cost? What is the pricing? For the athlete side, what are the things that you've seen are the biggest determination of pricing? Is it size of following? Is it engagement? Is it the type of content? There's always been kind of variables that happen for a deal. And anything in particular you see?
Yeah, I would defer to some of the third parties where actually some of the deal making is done, like the open doors, et cetera. But for me, and what I've observed is, because it's early days, you have the full spectrum of deal making, including barter, frankly. Like, I'm going to send you a gift box and you're going to promise to do, a box opening. I think that's what it's called. But at some point, I think we're going to get a bit closer to the concept of athletes as their own media companies, and they can price that appropriately. What's the cost of the IP? And is that being licensed, or is it being owned? Talent fees, production, and then what are the brand's goals when it comes to either driving direct response or awareness? And how is that measured and compensated? And so what's cool about the role that Instagram and other social media companies can play is, we're building tools to help accommodate A, different brand objectives, but B, different ways in which brands work with creators and how to actually measure that output and that success. So whether it's driving actual click-through and conversion to a product being sold on Instagram, or just simply driving impressions. But I always find it a little bit funny, and I'm certain you've seen this too, when you get the random article in your inbox talking about someone's NIL value. And my questions are always, what model are they using? Because in my opinion, the best model is, how much is or was someone actually willing to pay? Like, that's a real data point. And that's what's going to help us shape and benchmark this in a way that's useful for athletes and brands. So not that it's purely speculative right now, but I think we're just going to continue to need more data points across the board in this massive spectrum of college athletes, ranging from a few thousand followers to millions of followers. What is the price to be paid, and what are you actually getting, whether it is DR, whether it is, brand awareness, whether it is a mix of IRL and social, digital, et cetera. We're still so early days, and I think that's why student athletes are asking so many questions around what model they should be using to price themselves in the market.
I love that you called them their own media networks or channels. We've always positioned influential all the campaigns as a media buy on social. If these influencers are their native audience or their paid media application, which is the NIL of their likeness. The number of variables is dizzying. Like there literally is like, whether it's the O&O handle gets to repost it on the brand, whether it's the whitelisting and the usage, the exclusivity, all these things, the production value of it, the on-site stuff, so many things that could come up about that. So yeah, I would tell to anyone listening, value yourself on your distribution ability, on the time and effort it takes. Yeah, and put your price out, shoot your shot. The brand will let you know if it doesn't make any sense. And brand side, yeah, I do think of it in a standardization way. Like instead of maybe paying someone because they're really big on the field, because they have a big name, but if they have no real engagement, be mindful of the CPM and cost as well. So yeah, we see it in some great brands. I'm not sure if I can't speak about of who it is yet, because I think we're waiting for the press piece to come out. But where they actually just picked out a number of women's basketball players to essentially put out content regardless of size and still pay them equally because they wanted to find a way to drive equity. So there's a number of models we're seeing, and obviously brands can find ways to jump in regionally or nationally and really kind of put their stamp on the NIL space. So it's exciting times.
Yeah, and I love the fact that, and again, we heard it. I was fortunate enough to listen in on the last panel before I jumped on this one, but how important values are to this generation of athletes and creators, and in many ways, like how are you trading on those values and who people want to work with and what they stand for. And that is certainly a consideration, maybe even more so than generations in the past. And so, I think that's part of the calculus at this point too. And one piece of feedback we continue to get from creators and student athletes is they don't want to necessarily get in the business of doing one-off deals. They want to be true partners to those brands and vice versa. And again, in terms of the brand, in terms of the student athlete, how do you position yourself for a longer term engagement? For the student athlete, it's, hey, how can I deliver value to whatever it is this brand's goals are? And understanding that, okay, if their goal is on a campaign basis, if it's to drive awareness, if it's just be in association with a student athlete who has the same values we do as a brand, and then vice versa for the student athlete, looking for those brands who are open and willing to have a prolonged engagement that supports them and their livelihood off the field, but also again makes them feel like they're invested in that company and what they stand for. And granted, that's easier said than done. And I think again, there's different models and different approaches depending on the athlete and depending on the brand. But what we continue to hear ad nauseum from this community is, yeah, I don't want to just necessarily do the one-off deal with, not DraftKings or whoever, like with Target about, making one or two social media posts. It's how can we do something that feels like it's year round, where I'm continuing to serve their interests, they're continuing to serve mine, and we feel like we actually have a true partnership.
Yeah, the ambassadorship. And I know we only have 5 minutes left, so I can't not talk about it. But on the brand side, guys, obviously there's a tremendous amount of opportunities there for those that are listening. For those that are listening, maybe that are athletes themselves, or maybe some previous guests, Dave was instrumental in the launch of subscriptions, I believe, with Jordan Childs and Sedona Prince. So a net new way to monetize if you're in the NIL space. Talk about that, what that means, how it came about, and I mean, that's a game changer. All of a sudden, there's now kind of recurring revenue streams and not kind of feast or famine like it is sometimes with brands.
Yeah, and I have to give full credit to my team, who is so deeply entrenched in student athletes. We have a former student athlete on this team. We have a colleague who lives in Eugene and is very close with the Oregon community and lives and breathes college sports. And so, as you can tell, like, this is a rare opportunity for us to turn our passions into our profession, which I think we both get to say that, which is not something everyone gets to say. But in terms of subscriptions, I think it's really in keeping with, hey, we're the platform. We want to give you as a creator and as a student athlete the ability to engage your fans and monetize your fan base however you see fit. For some folks, we won't see subscriptions as a great fit, and that's okay. In the case of Sedona and Jordan, they were pioneers in helping us learn about the best ways to serve their needs and the needs of student athletes. And so I don't know if folks saw, Sedona this past week actually exclusively shared her decision to return to Oregon for another year with her paid subscribers on Instagram stories and engaged with them about their decision. To me, that feels like real value a family get in having a paid subscription. And as we both know, there are a lot of businesses out there that make a lot of money putting premium content behind a paywall or bringing fans closer to them and, and offering different, unique, compelling opportunities. Student athletes should be no different. We hope that student athletes, by and large, are going to choose ways to monetize that are right for them. And whether that is, again, in front of or behind a paywall, but something that enables them to have a deeper relationship with their fans. And, what's interesting about what we've developed, and there's a suite of monetization tools that exist on social, and there will be more to come in 2022. But what's really neat is that we actually see how student athletes and creators are, for lack of a better term, like hacking our platform, because they're using things on our platform for ways in which to engage each other and to engage their fans. And so as an example, we saw that athletes were using the close friends features on stories to create fan clubs. Okay, well, we think to ourselves, how can we actually make that easier for creators? And so much of our product development is actually inspired by observing how people use our platform every day. Subscriptions is obviously a model that's been around for a while, but again, it's one of the many ways in which athletes can choose their own adventure when it comes to monetizing their fan base. And we're fortunate that we have great partners in Sedona and Jordan who wanted to show us the way, wanted to show us what would break, wanted to show us, how critically important it could be for them and their fans. And then we can build off of that and make sure that it's even more valuable to the generation of athletes that we would hope to release that to moving forward.
Exciting times, the monetization NIL. With 1 minute left, I'd love for you to give the stat you told me before. So when Jordan and Sedona hopefully have the big moment, they go maybe the draft day or they go in the Olympics or something happens that is huge for them, whatever that is. And obviously a very small percentage of people actually get that. But when that does happen, when that moment happens for someone, whether it's on the official level or more just a personal level, talk about the percentage of increase in size and followership and kind of the ways that you saw that growth happen.
Yeah, so, we talk a lot about with athletes in general around being ready for the moment, being ready for all the on-court success, on-field success that they're going to have by being ready on social media for that moment. And so we had a summit with, over 1,000 Olympic athletes for Tokyo 2020 to drive that narrative home of, hey, you're at peak relevance. Be ready for that moment. Be ready for people to come and search for you and potentially want to follow you and engage with you and be a lifelong fan. So this stat's a little bit dated, but we did an analysis around the NBA draft over a 3-year period. And what we found was for first round draft picks, if you didn't post anything on your Instagram page the week of the draft, you still grew your follower base roughly in the 30% range. So people were coming to follow you. If I get drafted by the Detroit Pistons, Detroit fans are going to come to my Instagram, look for me, potentially follow me. Among those who posted to Instagram during draft week, that follower growth was up to 77%. So you give fans, prospective fans and followers, a reason to understand who you are and to click that follow button and become those lifelong fans. And so again, in the NIL realm, and I know I'm belaboring a point here, but in the realm of NIL, let's be honest, the NCAA quite literally markets the fact that only 2% of all college athletes will play professionally. So you have this juxtaposition of college and soon to be high school being actually the time when your earning potential from an NIL perspective is at its highest. So create those building blocks on social so you're able to maximize that window of time and have that foundation for, as somebody said on the last panel, being ready to just generally be a content creator long after your playing career is done.
Sage advice, and Chris is here to play us off. So any questions, Chris? You want to get rid of us?
I just wanted to say, Dave, you have possibly the coolest job in the world. And on top of it, I got to spend some time with your team over the weekend, and you got an awesome team. So kudos to you and your team for being so awesome.
I appreciate it. It's the job is made cool when I get to meet guys like yourself, especially out in the wild. And I'm just hoping 2022 gives us a lot more opportunities to do that in person. I'm going to New York in a few weeks to go to a college basketball tournament. It will have been 2 years since I've been able to go to a college basketball tournament. So I'm just looking forward to getting back to that and to seeing you all in person and to many of the people listening on this video call.
Nice. Well, when you make it out to LA, let me know. We'll hang.
You got it.
And thanks as always, Ryan, holding it down. All right. We'll see you
Thanks,
guys.
Appreciate it.
See y'all.
All right. Thanks.